Hello everyone, welcome to the presentation of Pokemon Phenomenon versus the Classroom, First Do No Harm. My name is Janene Sproul. The Pokemon Phenomenon, as it became known, occurred on December the 16th in 1997. Episode 38, Deno Senshi Porygon, went to air at 7 p.m, and by the end of the evening, 685 children had been rushed to hospital. Research following the incident narrowed the trigger for the neurological episodes down to a list of variables. These included the saturated red colour used in a flashing image over a large proportion of the screen, the level of concentration of the viewers, and the percentage retinal area covered by the viewed image. Japanese hospitals recorded similar symptoms for the children initially admitted. Ferruccio and colleagues in 1998 investigated the patient background of a group of children and found that the viewing conditions of those affected were significantly different to those unaffected. The conditions measured included level of concentration and distance from screen. They also found that seizure responses were more likely to occur in the adolescent age group, and that approximately 5% of viewers complained of varying physiological problems. This number was higher than expected, but justified by many children displaying symptoms not needing immediate medical intervention on December the 16th. Following research regarding the Pokemon phenomenon, in February 2005 the International Telecommunication Union for Radio Communication instigated Recommendation BT1702. This included broadcast limits on flash frequency, luminance and size, and highlighted the need for further investigation into the use of saturated red colour. These recommendations, however, only covered broadcasts on television. The internet and video games were still parameter-free. The 2007 televised launch of the London 2012 Olympics logo illustrated how mismatched guidelines could cause difficulties. Images that had been accessible through the 2012 Olympic website were transferred to television broadcast without being checked for stimulative material. After repeated calls were logged at Epilepsy Action, the broadcast was pulled from the air. Dr. Harding, who was instrumental in creating Recommendation BT1702, went on record to verify that the images did not meet the guidelines. The material was subsequently reworked and then re-released. Once again, a saturated red colour had been present, surrounded by moving striped patterns. Generally, television programming is covered by these guidelines, but what is photosensitivity, and what about guidelines for educational computer games and media programs? Physiologically, photosensitivity is an epileptic reaction to visual light. Hypersynchronous excitation of neurons, in this case starting from the occipital cortex. The reaction can be measured using an electroencephalograph during intermittent photic stimulation and is known as a photoparoxysmal response, or a PPR. Not everyone who registers as photosensitive has epilepsy. Other syndromes that have been linked to the trait include migraine, ADHD and ASD. Population figures are difficult to determine. Pure photosensitive epilepsy is found in only 1 per 4,000 head of population, but this ignores the other syndromes and the fact that 5 to 15-year-old females are more likely to register PPRs than any other gender or age grouping. Researchers focusing on children and adolescents record up to 8% of their sample populations displaying PPRs. Although some photosensitive reactions are very obvious, others can be subtle. Most students would not even recognise it for what it is. In younger children, for example, migraines can manifest as stomach aches. A photosensitive 7-year-old may never be able to sit still while watching the interactive whiteboard, yet have no trouble concentrating on bookwork. High school students invariably require extended periods of concentration and may manifest different symptoms. Diagnosis of photosensitivity is beyond the scope of an educator's job description, but the observations that we supply to medical professionals can be invaluable. One of the debates about subclinical PPRs is the possibility of transitory cognitive impairment, or TCI. TCI is like a glitch in time. The student will not be aware that they have missed 1 to 3 seconds of a class. And taken individually, not many other people would find that cause for concern either. But these episodes can be stimulated by visual media and happen multiple times in a row. Binney has long defended the continued use of visual cues to compensate for an intermittent failure to register spoken words during episodes of TCI. For teaching purposes, the question of cognition in the classroom is closely linked to that of concentration, sequencing, and long-term memory. Disrupting these processes can affect the cognitive ability of a student and may be caused by certain colours, patterns, or screen brightness. But now for something positive. Spontaneous remission is the best news regarding photosensitivity. It might just suddenly go away. This occurs in up to 33% of individuals with photosensitivity. It is uncertain what triggers the remission or which individuals will be fortunate enough to lose the trait, but highlights the need for flexible learning skills to be taught to all students. Regarding classroom technology, no one doubts the great leaps forward that we have made over recent years. Valuable research has been carried out investigating many facets of technological integration into our society and specifically into our classrooms. But relatively few studies have investigated the neurological effect of visual media on a growing brain. Kohler and Mishra in 2009 highlighted 7 important areas of knowledge for an educator, and they brought them together in a model called TPAC. The TPAC model shown here will be familiar to most of you. It begins with the technological, content and pedagogical knowledge areas. These overlap with each other, forming 7 identifiable areas of knowledge. Technological knowledge includes safety practices and guidelines. In TPAC Explained, found at tpac.org, the definition of technological knowledge includes being able to recognise when information technology can assist or impede the attainment of a goal. This raises a couple of questions. Should educational researchers and policymakers advise on safety practices and guidelines for digital media use in the classroom? And should photosensitivity factor into these? To first do no harm. Medical researchers have provided the raw material to produce guidelines for television programming. These guidelines have been implemented in most countries around the world. Given that the age group most likely to be photosensitive is to be found in our classrooms, should we be asking policymakers to extend those recommendations to our schools? As a classroom teacher, I have in the past been frustrated occasionally by articles alerting me to an issue but providing no practicable advice. As individual teachers, we can choose to alter some of our own classroom environment. The next 2 slides focus on reasonable classroom adjustments based on medical research. They will not prevent, but will decrease the stimulative effect of digital media on any student. Firstly, keep the curtains open. Sunlight doesn't flicker, but most screens do. Integration of digital technologies has been gradual. In some instances, we have replaced viewing a DVD on a television set with playing the section on the interactive whiteboard. But some of the associated practices have lingered, for example, shutting the curtains so that we can see the television more easily. The size and default brightness of interactive whiteboard and computer screens should enable viewing without darkening the room. Secondly, turn screens off when not in use. Even background peripheral flicker can precipitate reactions, so blank the screens rather than using screensaver for extended periods of time. And thirdly, distance of students from the screens. This determines the percentage retinal area stimulated by an image. Interactive whiteboard manuals may include warnings for minimum viewing distances, especially for 3D material. If a student has been diagnosed as being photosensitive, then there are 3 relatively simple steps that may aid them in class. Firstly, seat them up the back of the classroom so that interactive whiteboard images occupy a smaller retinal area. Secondly, seat them next to a window. Natural light doesn't flicker, and this will decrease the impact of any flicker or flashing. Thirdly, reduce screen luminance and contrast. Luminance is the brightness of the screen, relatively easy to decrease on computers, and decreasing the contrast makes it less likely for images to stimulate a reaction. Further research has been planned to provide visual support to students who are photosensitive. I thank you for your time in attending this presentation and would value any comments or questions via email at the University.